thesis. And my thesis will focus on three main parts. The first part related to the production and isolation of nanocellulose by the acid hydrolysis treatment. The second part is the production and characterization of the BBH nanocellulose nanocomposite filament. And the final part related to the production and characterization of the 3D printed sample. Let's move to the second part, experiment part. Here is my nanocomposite production. You can see here from the left side is the production of the nanocellulose. So nanocellulose CNC was synthesized by the acid hydrolysis treatment for 1 or 2 hours. And the synthesized CNCs were then mixed with the BBH matrix and then with the help of the ultrasonication. And the mixture here will then degassed and dried in the oven for a few days to obtain the film plates. Afterwards, the film plates were grinded into powders in order to before being extruded into filaments. And finally, the obtained filament can be applied for the 3D printing machine in order to obtain the 3D printed part. And in order to easy for understand during my presentation, this is the designation that I use for my sample on the top right. So F is designated for filament, B is designated for 3D printed sample, and the values is 2 is designated for the percentage of nanofiller that I use in my nanocomposites. This slide explains the optimal condition between the chemical acid hydrolysis treatment and ultrasonication. So from the optical microscope, we can see clearly that the CNC synthesized after 2 hours are more thinner and they homogeneously disperse within the BBH matrix thanks to the application of the ultrasonication. So we decided to choose this protocol for producing all the nanocomposite formulation. Let's move to the result discussion part. First of all, I will give you some results about the morphologies and characterization of the synthesized CNC. So the SEM and TEM techniques were used to evaluate the morphologies of CNC. As can be seen from the SEM image with different magnification, so we can clearly observe the large aggregate of the nanocellulose and microcellulose fibers. Additionally, the TEM image revealed the synthesized CNC with the drop-like shape. And furthermore, the AFM techniques also help us to evaluate the synthesized CNC with have the fibrous shape and the length vary between 200 to 500 nanometers and the diameter vary between 5 to 10 nanometers. Let's move to the melt flow index test MFI of the filaments. This test helps us to assess the influence of the nanofillers on the viscosity of the nanocomposite filaments. And we can see clearly from the graph, the melt flow index decreased significantly with increase of the content of the nanofillers. And in these figures, I cannot obtain the value of the composition with 20% of nanofillers because this composition is too viscous. And this is one of the reasons that I cannot use this composition for the 3D printing application. And here the results of the microstructures characterization. From the left to the right, we can see the SEM micrograph of the niche filament, the composition with 5% in filaments and composition with 5% in 3D printed sample. So we can clearly see that in this, in the pure niche filament, the surface is very smooth, whereas the surface in the composite a little bit rough due to the presence of the nanocellulose. And nanocellulose appear as a white dot, and there were no large aggregates. And the observation revealed the homogeneities of the nanocellulose within the BBH matrix. Coming to this slide with the water moisture absorption test. This test helps us to determine the time to reach the saturation condition. So as can we see from the figure that when we increase the content of the nanocellulose within the BBH matrix, the water vapor permeability decrease. And it's very interesting because you know cellulose is hydrophilic. However, when we integrate them down to the scale nanoscale, they behave as a water vapor resistant agent. So this result proved the excellent water vapor resistance of nanocellulose even in the hydrophilic matrix like BBH. And the thermal behaviors of the nanocomposite was evaluated by thermogravimetric analysis TCAs and also differential scanning calorimetry DSCs. And here is the result of the TCAs. Following the TCA thermogram, we can see that there were three main mass loss reasons, and there were also an increase of the temperature, which related to the maximum degradation temperature Tmax, and the temperature which associated to 5% of loss T onset. And another striking feature here that we can observe for the composition with 10% of nanocellulose, this composition displays a peak of degradation at around 260, and this peak is coincident with the degradation rate of the build nanocellulose. So this is also a reason why we cannot obtain this composition for 3D printing, because they tend to be degraded before. And this is also the thermogram, TCA thermogram of the 3D printed sample. We also clearly see the increase of the thermal behavior by the increase of the maximum degradation temperatures. We can see from the derivative waves thermogram. And take into account the comparison between the filament and the 3D printed samples, on the right side, there were no difference between them, and so we can conclude that there were no effects of the working temperature on the thermal stability of the nanocomposites. For the DSC thermogram, we can see from the figures that in the comparison between the filament and the 3D printed sample, there were no remarkable difference between melting temperature. So this is a good point for the workability of the nanocomposites. And there were also the striking similarity between the filament and the 3D printed sample. From the DSC results, we have some conclusion. With the addition of the nanocellulose, it again increased through the increase of the thermal property in terms of the glass transition temperature we can see on the left figures. And another striking feature here is with the introduction of the nanocellulose, it tends to decrease the degree of the crystallinity inside the nanocomposites. And this behavior can be explained by when we introduce the nanocellulose tend to embed the polymer mobility change, so it leads to the decrease of the nanocomposite during the crystallization. And here is the comparison of the dynamic mechanical thermal analysis (DMTAs) of the filament and the 3D printed samples. So we can clearly see that all the samples, they display a similar viscoelasticity behaviors, and there was an remarkable enhancement of the storage modulus, the loss modulus, and slightly increments of the TGs by observing the peak of the tangent on the right side. So the introduction of the CNC leads to an increase of the dynamics modulus, and these results prove the stabilizing effects of nanocellulose on all the composite sample, regardless of the processing methods. For the tensile test, in the case of the filament, we obtain the representative stress and strain curves of the nanocomposites. So their behavior are typical behaviors of the soft polymerase materials. And when we add more nanocellulose, the tensile property increase, especially with the 20% of the nanocellulose inside the matrix. However, this phenomenon is accompanied with the reduction of the elongation at break. And the same behavior we can obtain for the 3D printed samples. We can follow the figure in the slide. For the grid test, this test helps us to determine the dimensional stability of the nanocomposites. So following the curves of the grid test, there were a remarkable and progressive reduction of the grid compliance when we introduced the nanocell law within the BVF matrix. For example, for filaments, the composition with 20%, so a high reduction by about 270% compared to the next one. So let's come to the final part, in the conclusion. So my thesis have successfully achieved in three main parts. The first part related to the production and isolation of nanocellulose. So it's in my own nanomaterial that I already synthesized. They have the rock line and with the average length between 200 and 500 nanometers and around between 5 to 10 nanometers. And we also succeed in produce the nanocomposite filaments tend to the application of the ultrasonication, and the introduction of the nanocellulose behavior and there's a good property in terms of the water vapor resistance and the increment of the stiffness, the strength, and also the creep resistance. For the 3D printers, we also succeeded in use this type of material for 3D printing machines with different composition from 2 to 10% of the nanocellulose, and we also obtained the very good excellent property of the nanocellulose within the BVF matrix for the 3D printed sample. And a part of my thesis was presented at the international conference on nanomechanics and nanocomposites in Vicenza last September. Finally, this is the end of my presentation. I would like to express my thankfulness to Professor Begoretti, my two tutors, Daniele and Annelisa, for helping me during my thesis. And I also would like to say thank you to the Erasmus Mundus program for funding me during my study here in University of Toronto. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
I have a little question. You observed a decrease of water absorption by introducing cellulose.
Yes.
And why? Why do you think it occurs even if cellulose is more hygroscopic?
Yes, it's an interesting question. So, according to my knowledge, I read many literature many papers from the literatures, and in some papers with the introduction of the nanocellulose, they tend to decrease the water vapor permeability, and this is also the excellent property of the nanocellulose because they, on the other hand, the main point is here that is the nanoscale of the nanocellulose, because you can see that in the biggest Bayer, he did for microcellulose, he introduced in the BOA's resin. However, it tends to absorb more water, due to the hydrophilics.
Okay.
Yeah, but when we integrate the nanocellulose, the cellulose down to the nanoscale, they tend to have this behavior, and this my results also in good agreement with others, other literature. Yeah.
There is some interpretation about this effect of the nanostructure of the cellulose.
Yes, should be. I think, yes, because I found it. I worked on my thesis and I found it, and I found it is in good agreement with the previous research. So I think this could be a very interesting property of nanocellulose.
Okay. Yes, that's a recommend. Any other question? Okay. Thank you. Again. You can wait 5 minutes for the signature of your
Yes.
accent.
Thank you very much.